I want to just briefly mention the rather unfortunate event that took place in Toronto this afternoon with a shooting during the Raptors celebration, and to send to the City of Toronto and to all the families and individuals that were directly and indirectly involved our best wishes and condolences. Council, I would like to call this regular meeting of the Corporation of the Town of Lincoln to order and ask that everyone stand for the national anthem. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to begin this evening by reading a safety notice. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate the council chambers to the nearest exit, which is in this direction or in this direction. Through the chamber doors, obey all instructions given by the clerk, Ms. Kirkelos, who is sitting in front of me. And if assistance is required, she is the person that you should connect with. Once you've evacuated the building, please gather in the front parking lot outside of Town Hall. Also, the Town of Lincoln Committee and Council meetings are posted on our YouTube channel. I would like to thank members of the public for attending the meeting this evening, and I just want to remind everyone of our rules of engagement to please be respectful while others are speaking, and to please refrain from clapping or any other response to debate or presentations. I would also like to acknowledge Chief Kane, who is acting CAO in the town of Grimsby at the moment, but is also here in his capacity as the Chief of Grimsby Fire. Thank you very much, Chief Kane. I'll read the land acknowledgement. The Shononton people have called these lands home for thousands of years, and more recently, the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee have been sharing the land as one dish, one spoon treaty territory. We would like to acknowledge the enduring resilience of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people who call this territory home. All members of council are here this evening, and I'll start on my right. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Adam Russell, Councillor John Pachariva, Councillor Tony Brunet, Councillor Diane Rajima. To my left, Councillor Paul McPherson, Councillor Mike Mikulik, Councillor Lynn Timmers, and Councillor Greg Reimer. We have a number of staff that are here this evening. I think all departments are representative. We certainly had plenty of standing committee meetings over the last cycle. There are no proclamations this evening, but we do have two presentations. Please note that the presentations may speak for a maximum of 10 minutes. However, Mr. Hayworth, when you get up to the podium, if you feel that you need a little bit more time, I can accommodate you. All right, so I'd like to ask Mr. Hayworth, David Hayworth, who's the official plan policy consultant from the region of Niagara. And I think originally Mr. Giles was coming with you, but are either of your other two colleagues going to be participating?
Thank you. To the mayor, Mr. Giles sends his regrets. He had something else come up. No, Mr. Norman, my colleague, will be presenting after me on the natural environment.
Okay, that's very good. Thank you very much. Well, please go ahead. We're very interested. This is quite an interesting report. After all of these years, how all of these policies are coming together, it really is. It's good to see.
Great. Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, and members of the public. I'm Dave Hayworth, and I'm the official plan policy consultant that's putting together the new regional official plan. And it's a pleasure to be here to speak to our municipal partners again. I think I was here last spring and summer providing an update. And so we're back again to provide an update, and we'll be back again in 2020 to provide further updates. So the reason we're creating a new official plan is the existing official plan, which was previously a regional policy plan created in the early 70s. At that time, the regional mandate was mainly preserving agricultural lands and dealing with agricultural uses and urban boundaries. And over time, planning itself has become more comprehensive and complex, and there's been numerous downloading of planning responsibilities from the province over the years, increasing what the region has to deal with in terms of planning as far as growth management. And we've always kept the regional official plan up to date by amendments, but those amendments have been based on an older, outdated platform. And what we want to do is create a new platform that's more comprehensive and contemporary that reflects the current planning duties of the region. And when we do that, we want to create a new official plan that implements provincial policy, reflects the goals and priorities of community and regional council and our local council partners, and provides clear direction for our local planning and flexibility where appropriate. So this slide basically shows the process that's been occurring to date. Regional Council approved resources, funding resources for the new official plan. We've put together frameworks for the priority background studies which are underway. And in March of 2019, Regional Planning Committee and Council approved a consultation framework timeline for the new official plan. So this slide shows our priority background studies that are underway in terms of growth management and rural and natural systems, and I'll speak about those as we go along. But I want to say it's very important to realize we've already undertook quite a bit of work. We've done a transportation master plan, and we've done a water and wastewater master plan. Both of those documents will help inform the official plan. We're also undergoing and we'll be developing a cultural heritage section, and one of the key components of that will be an archaeological management plan. We know that there's 3 municipalities in the region that have their own archaeological management plans, and we realize that especially some of the smaller municipality resources are limited, and we want to assist with managing archaeological resources and how to deal with them through the planning process. So we're creating a regional archaeological management plan that can identify areas of archaeological potential, and local municipalities can then use those areas in their own official plan and have policies to reflect those. This is the process we're high-level process we're using to create the new official plan. We're at the background study collection stage now, and we're doing consultations on that. Broader public consultations and stakeholder consultation, more specific special interest groups, etc. After that, in 2020, we'll be drafting different sections of the official plan from a policy and mapping perspective, and we'll have consultations on that. beginning of 2021, we want to pull those sections together comprehensively and create an entire official plan, and that will give us a year of back and forth with our partners and various groups that have certain interests or concerns to make revisions over the course of the year to the consolidated document, and then hopefully have that approved at Regional Council and then off to the province for approval. So I'll quickly kind of run over the priority background studies. Under growth management, we have the land budget or land needs assessment. Want to determine the amount of land needed for residential and employment growth to 2041. And currently, we want to establish a process for dealing with urban expansion requests. We have several urban boundary expansion requests that are in. Under the old growth plan, you had to deal with those through the municipal comprehensive review or the development of the new official plan. Under the new growth plan that has just come out, there's policies that provide a window, I guess a window of opportunity subject to certain criteria of possible expansions outside of that new official plan process. So we want to create a framework because we're anticipating those requests coming in. Urban structure is another very important component of the official plan. We want to identify strategic areas to direct growth and intensification. And we want those areas implemented by secondary plan. And we want to direct those strategic areas of growth to take advantage of public transit, infrastructure, and community facilities. And by establishing these areas, what that does is help protect established neighborhoods. So a preliminary, I guess, structure of components for an urban structure is the urban growth center, downtown St. Catharines, which is provincially identified. Regional centers, downtown Niagara Falls, downtown Welland would be examples. The GO Transit station areas where we've already done and had the secondary plans approved for those areas, recognizing those basically. Other strategic growth areas, those would be examples, would be the Brock District Plan area that we've undertaken and finished, as well as what we're, the Glendale District Plan that we're developing right now out around Niagara Square and the mall, or Niagara College and the mall. And then there's local centers and local corridors that our municipal partners may want to identify in their own official plans. Employment land strategy we're undertaking right now, we have a consultant firm that's been hired. We want to identify and protect a sufficient and marketable supply of land for employment uses. And under the growth plan, we are to identify employment areas in our plan. And these are areas that are regionally important to protect from conversion. So it would require a regional plan amendment if you're going to convert them to other uses. So we've been working with area planners, and we will continue to do so before bringing that material public for review. Another key component is a housing strategy. We want to plan for appropriate range and mix of housing forms to provide choice, affordable options, and aging in place opportunities. And we want to align with the region's housing and homelessness action plan. We've hired a consulting firm to develop housing data to find what are the core housing needs in the region. We wanted to know what are the numbers, how are they broken down, and how are they distributed throughout the region. So we've gathered that. It's been presented to Regional Planning Committee, and it's been shared with area planners, and it will be shared with the local council fairly shortly, I believe. So I'll go to rural and natural systems. Agriculture is a very important section of our official plan, and we're undertaking agricultural background study and update. We believe our agricultural policies are quite contemporary, but we want to do some analysis for conformity because of the changes with provincial policy and make sure that we're staying contemporary and maximizing our possible flexibility we can have under the provincial system. An example of one thing we're doing is we've been pressing the Niagara Escarpment Commission through Regional Planning Committee and Council over the requirements for wineries. The requirements for wineries in the Niagara Escarpment Plan are more restrictive than in the Greenbelt Plan in general. So we've been pushing on that issue to try and create a level playing field. The natural environment, Sean will be speaking of, so I'm going to skip over that because he'll get into the details on that. Aggregate resources. We've completed in 2016 a state of aggregates in the Niagara Region background report, and then the consolidated provincial plan review came out in 2017 with some changes. So after that, in the spring of 2018, we had an addendum to update that background report, and now we're in the process of developing some draft policies. And we realize the concern over haulage routes and that type of thing, and we've been speaking to our transportation and engineering section about that and how to envelope that in. And we realize haulage routes are dealt with through kind of short, midterm, and long-term type of solutions, and we'll be monitoring that and how best to incorporate that into the official plan where we can to address that. Climate change is another key component. This is a very complex section, and this slide basically shows all the different components that affect climate change. Basically, compact urban development in complete communities is a main driver. Public transit, the protection of the natural environment, these are all important components that we have to take a look at. And we're doing a discussion paper we're planning for the fall, and that will have looked at what other regions are doing and other municipalities are doing with respect to climate change from a policy perspective. So we're doing a kind of an environmental scan, best practices, and pulling all that information together.
Mr. Hayworth, just while you have a bit of a break there, let me just ask council if we can continue on to give you the time that you need
Yeah.
to finish
I'm
up.
almost done.
Council, what is your pleasure on extending the time? Thank you very much.
Thank
Please
you.
proceed.
Appreciate that. So in terms of consultation, this triangle base, as I mentioned, the Regional Council approved a consultation framework in March of 2019. And the building blocks are what was done a few years ago under Imagine Niagara, where we went out to all the municipalities to find out what's important to the communities in Niagara from a planning perspective. And the triangle shows what are the important themes that have been identified, and we have further information on those. And we feel that's still contemporary and somewhat was solidified through the Shape Niagara exercise that the region undertook, very similar results. So we're building on those, and we know what's important, and now when we go out to the communities, we want to talk about what background we've collected, what options we develop, what recommendations and policies there are, so we have something of substance for them to actually comment on. So we've been holding stakeholder sessions. Sean's work is a really good example. As if you remember, I talked about consultation at the background stage, then at the draft policy stage, and then the comprehensive plan. So at the draft, at the background stage, we've had for the natural environment, we've had workshops with the special interest groups, the environmentalists, the agricultural community, and then we've had public information sessions as well. For the OP in general, we have 4 open houses planned in the fall of 2019. These are our next steps: background work in 2019, public consultations in the fall, local council checkpoint in the spring of 2020. And this slide basically shows the preliminary framework for the new official plan, the categories: the sustainable region, growing region, connected region, competitive region, and vibrant region, and it shows the issues or themes that they identify and address on a high level. That completes the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hayworth. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Brunet?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To Mr. Hayworth, thank you for the presentation. Just a quick question through you, Madam Mayor. to the presenter. You spoke in the section on rural and natural systems, and you talked about the haulage routes or designated truck routes. Obviously, we have a lot of aggregate producers in our area, and it's one of our biggest issues right now. Recently, we've just met with one of our quarry, and they identified that one of their biggest assets in managing the trucks in areas like Niagara Falls is designated truck routes and enforcement. So you mentioned that you've done an addendum in the spring of 2018. I'm just wondering if do you work collaboratively with other areas around the province, perhaps like Kitchener-Waterloo, Caledon, Halton, that also have large aggregate producers, to see what they're incorporating into their official plan, or is this something that's done at arm's length?
Through the mayor to the councillor. We will do that in a sense. I think that the background work that's done is a lot to deal with aggregates, where they are, the resources, et cetera. We recognize that hauling is a very important component. It's very difficult to address existing aggregate operators. The policies to go back and try and address somebody that already has a license is very difficult. But we can put policies in place to help guide new applications or maybe expansions. We've been working closely with, like I said, our transportation and engineering section, and they've mentioned they've done some, would you call it, design work here at one of the trouble intersections, and they're doing a haulage route study, broader haulage route study over the next, it's a priority, but they're trying to schedule it, I think, over the next 6 months to a year to get that done. And what we have to do, and I think your suggestion is a good one, and one that we normally do as best practices, is check what other municipalities are doing and how we can best incorporate that in design. Whatever we put in, ultimately, it is an enforcement issue.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Councillor. There being no other questions, thank you very much, Mr. Hayward. Oh, very quick, Councillor. Councillor Ringima.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That was kind of last minute for me. So in Lincoln and in Niagara, of course, generally, we're very fortunate that we're able to produce food and that we have the natural resources to grow food and produce it. And we're the envy of a lot of places globally, I'm sure, that don't have the natural resources to be able to produce food, the right soil, the water, et cetera. So we're hearing consistently that it's becoming difficult for a lot of farmers and food producers to continue on and to be viable. Now, some would say maybe that's not the case. Others say it is. So through this official plan, what is it at the regional level that we can do to support food production in Niagara? And I know I see that in the next presentation that there's going to be a discussion about interaction of the natural environment with agriculture, and that's one way that this official plan can support agriculture. But is there anything else that we can do at this point that you see that might be integrated into the official plan, into the policies?
Through the mayor to the councillor, I think it all starts with the fundamentals, and without getting into any specifics, preserve the land base, protect the agricultural operations from other competing land uses, or in a sense, land uses that aren't compatible, and there'll be land use compatibility issues down the road, protecting that right to farm, so to speak. Maximizing what we can do. And that's what I talked about, having contemporary policies, and when I talked about the agricultural part, that we can maximize what we're allowed to do under the provincial planning framework. And I mentioned the wineries and aligning the Niagara Escarpment with the Greenbelt Plan. So those are all things we can do. Sean will be up speaking about the natural environment, and we recognize one of the issues is water courses or irrigation ditches and fish habitat and the issue of setbacks from those. That's a very big issue in Niagara on the Lake. It's probably an issue to some extent here as well. So we recognize that, and that is something, I don't have the answer to that right now, but that is something we have to address as we move along through the process.
Okay, thank you. So one more question, Madam Chair. So do you see that provincial policy maybe making it easier for farmers and supporting food production? Do you see it loosening things up so that we're able to maximize our policies? Or what do you think from your review so far?
To the mayor, to the councillor, I don't think there's anything it's caused a significant more problems. I don't know that it's made anything more flexible in the last set of review. That is something we'll take back and take a better look at. The agricultural background study is just starting on its way, so I think as we move along, I can better answer that question for you.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you very much, Mr. Hayward. Councillors, I have a motion. I'm sorry, but I don't know whose signature is on here first. Is this Councillor Reimer? Councillor McLeod? I'll be getting a stamp made for you, Councillor. I have a motion moved by Councillor Reimer, seconded by Councillor Timmers. Receive and file the presentation from David Hayworth, Official Plan Policy Consultant, Niagara Region, with respect to the new Regional Official Plan, Spring 2019 update. Any questions to the motion? Your pleasure on the motion? Any opposed? The motion is carried. And now I would like to invite Mr. Sean Norman to come forward. Sean is the senior planner, is a senior planner at the Niagara Region, and his presentation this evening is regarding the natural environment background study for the regional official plan. Thank you very much for coming this evening.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. My name is Sean Norman, and I am a Senior Planner in Community and Long-Range Planning at Niagara Region. I'm here this evening to provide you a brief overview of the Natural Environment Work Program that is being undertaken in support of the new Niagara Official Plan, as well as to provide a summary of some of the key findings of the background study that is being completed. Before I go into more detail on the scope of work, I would like to briefly present some of the reasons why natural environment planning is such an important component of the new Niagara Official Plan. Firstly, natural environment planning supports the identification of areas for growth and development. For example, at a regional level, it helps identify where new growth areas should be. Secondly, there is a range of provincial requirements that must be implemented by the region. The third bullet point refers to the important ecosystem level role that natural systems play in our daily lives. As you know, agriculture, tourism, and other industries in Niagara rely on clean water and air for their success. Natural environment planning supports the vitality of these industries by ensuring that a healthy natural environment will be available for the long term. Fourthly, there is a link between natural environment and human health, both physical and mental. Natural environment planning ensures that green spaces required for the well-being of Niagara residents will be available for generations to come. Finally, planning for climate change will be a common theme throughout the new official plan and will be addressed at each one of our work plans. We'll be striving to better understand the connection between natural environment planning and climate change. The definition of natural environment can mean something different to everyone. To ensure that the scope of the work program would be well understood, we attempted to clearly define it as an early step in the project. In scope includes all of the environmental features and environmental systems as generally defined by the province. Some of the identified topics are very extensive. For example, natural heritage features includes woodlands, wetlands, habitat, valleylands, areas of natural and scientific interest, and more. What is being presented on this slide is an overview of the key phases of the work program. The process that is being undertaken is generally the same as would be used for any other planning or scientific study. Information is collected, options are developed and analyzed, and an implementation plan is created for the preferred option. In addition, there are a number of major points of engagement that will be used to inform the technical aspects of the project. As highlighted, we are currently on phase 3 and are striving to inform and educate our stakeholders and partners on some of the key topics and issues related to natural environment planning in the region. At this stage, we have not developed options for evaluation and have yet to prepare draft policies. That work will be done during later phases of the project. The Natural Environment Background Study, in addition to discussion papers on mapping and watershed planning, will form the basis of the project moving forward. Their purpose is to ensure that policy development is informed by science and best available information. The scope of the background study was prepared in consultation with planning staff at each municipality and covers both general topics as well as issues and trends that are specific to Niagara. Several of the key topics will be overviewed in the next few slides. Much of the direction for natural environment planning is provided by the province. Provincial direction starts with the provincial policy statement. The PPS identifies the type of natural features, areas, functions, and systems that must be identified and protected. In some areas, the province has identified more detailed natural heritage systems and policies. In Niagara, we are responsible for implementing the Provincial Greenbelt Natural Heritage System and the Provincial Growth Plan Natural Heritage System. The Greenbelt NHS has been in place for a number of years and is generally reflected in existing regional policies. The Growth Plan NHS is new and is being implemented in the new Niagara Official Plan for the first time. Finally, the province provides a number of guidelines and other tools to support municipalities. These include, for example, the Natural Heritage Reference Manual and the Greenbelt Technical Papers. As the two primary land uses in the rural areas of the region, it is critical to develop natural environment and agricultural systems which are compatible with one another. Provincial direction and existing regional policies are generally clear that natural heritage policies are not intended to restrict agricultural operations. For example, Policy 2.1.9 of the PPS provides specific direction that the natural heritage policies of the PPS are not intended to limit the ability of agricultural uses to continue. Further, there are many exemptions in both the Greenbelt and Growth Plan NHSs related to agricultural buildings and structures. Finally, there is a common misconception that where a buffer is required between a new agricultural building and natural features, that it must be natural vegetation. In fact, both the Greenbelt Plan and Growth Plan include exemptions that state when the land will continue to be used for agricultural purposes, there is not a requirement for natural self-sustaining vegetation. Buffers in agricultural areas may continue to be planted with crops. Woodlands and other treat areas are often the most publicly valued components of a natural system. When considering woodlands to be protected through policy, it is significant woodlands which are considered to be key features. It is the responsibility of municipalities to identify and map significant woodlands, which is generally done through a two-step process. First, woodlands are identified and mapped based on defined criteria. Second, criteria are identified and applied to determine significance. Criteria can include, for example, proximity to other natural features and the size of the woodlot. Within the provincial NHSs, provincial policy for the protection of significant woodlands are to be used. Outside of provincial NHSs, municipalities are responsible for developing policies, which must be in conformance with the PPS. A related tool for the management and protection of trees and woodlands are local and regional tree bylaws. The Municipal Act sets out clear parameters of what may be permitted in a regional bylaw and what may be permitted in a local tree bylaw. Outside of the new Niagara Official Plan, the region has recently initiated a process to update the Regional Tree and Forest Conservation Bylaw. Following completion of the new official plan, there would be a process to ensure alignment between these two tools. Climate change and invasive species are recognized as two of the most significant threats to the natural environment and can often work in conjunction with one another to accelerate the deterioration of our natural areas. With respect to the relationship between natural environment and climate change, this generally means two things: planning to protect our natural areas from the impacts of climate change, and understanding that natural areas are an important tool for mitigation and resilience. For example, natural areas such as floodplains and wetlands can help mitigate the impacts of large storm events by storing stormwater, encouraging infiltration, and releasing it at more reasonable rates. There are many invasive species that are creating issues in Niagara, including Phragmites, garlic mustard, European buckthorn, and emerald ash borer. Directly controlling invasive species through the land use policies of official plans is difficult through the land use policies of official plans alone, and is typically better addressed through bylaws and other management tools. However, consideration needs to be given to how we classify woodlands and other treed areas that are in transition as a result of the impacts of invasive species. Watersheds are defined as an area that is drained by a river and its tributaries. The PPS requires that watersheds be the ecologically meaningful scale for integrated and long-term planning. Watershed planning provides a framework for the protection of water resources and in the management of human and natural resources at a watershed scale. It is not a new concept. However, recent provincial changes have reinforced the need for watershed planning to inform land use planning. The region will now have a lead role in coordinating watershed planning. A high priority discussion paper is being completed to better inform the updated process, roles, and responsibilities related to watershed planning. In addition to presentations at all of the local councils, we will also be consulting with the public and other stakeholders. Following this process, we will be reporting back to Regional Council with everything that we have heard. The next steps are to complete this first point of engagement and to finalize the background study and high priority discussion papers. Based on all the input we receive, we will begin to develop and evaluate various options for how natural systems and policies in the region could be developed. Thank you for your time.
Impeccable timing. Thank you very much.
It was rehearsed many times.
Yes, we do. We have the long arm. Thanks very much, Mr. Norman, and I would just ask council now if they have any questions of you. I had Councillor Mikulik. Okay, you're on.
Thank you,
Very good.
Madam Mayor. Through you to the presenter, thank you for your presentation. Just curious, when in consultation with stakeholders, I'm assuming that the NPCA would be part of that group?
Through the mayor to the councillor, yes, that's right. The NPCA is one of our important stakeholders. They kind of participate on part of our working groups, and we as well have had standalone meetings with them to talk about certain kind of key issues and as part of the project.
So the question I have through you to the presenter is there any concern about the fact that it's an interim board and that data being provided or opinions expressed may be premature at this point, especially when there's talk of possibly new board members, perhaps with more experience regarding this sort of subject coming down in the future?
Through the mayor to the councillor, I think to this point, we've been kind of dealing with the NPCA staff, and the issues that we've been dealing with are generally related to the policies that are going to be part of the regional official plan. So I think at this point, there's a pretty clear delineation of what the roles and responsibilities of the region are and what the roles and responsibilities of the Conservation Authority are. So we've been relying on Conservation Authority staff as a kind of a valuable resource to help inform us on some of the information we're going to need to know and how we're going to develop the regional policies and the regional system.
You answered my question.
Council-
Thank you.
Counselor, there was also, there were very significant discussions in the last term of council on this matter. And at that time, the board had a large number of very experienced people on it. Also, there was considerable discussion and debate at regional council as well. So I would suggest that the recommendations would be coming from the staff. Their CAO is very experienced, and she would the staff would bring forth the recommendations, and then action would be taken. But none of this is moving very quickly either, so, but it is a good point that you make. Thank you very much. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through to you, to Mr. Norman. I'm going to dovetail Councillor Mikulic's question around the watershed and a question on floodplain mapping. And do we know who will own floodplain mapping? Is it the region? Is it the MPCA? Has that been decided? Is it the municipality?
Through the mayor to the councillor, it's my understanding that, it's the Conservation Authority who has a responsibility for regulating and mapping natural hazards in the past, and it's my understanding they continue to have that responsibility moving forward.
Thank you.
I just want to clarify something, Mr. Norman. Councillor, you were talking about floodplain mapping. Were
Mapping.
you also were you referring in any way to floodplain, to anything else to do with floodplain, like risks or?
No, just
Okay.
getting the mapping done.
All right.
Because the mapping, as I understand it, as it applies to Lincoln, is in process, and I think that the floodplain maps that we have today are quite old, from what I understand.
Through the mayor to the councillor, yes, that's my understanding as well. So the Conservation Authority is currently in the process of floodplain mapping in Lincoln, and yes, it's my understanding that they're solely responsible for mapping and regulating natural hazards, which include floodplains.
That answers my question, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Norman, let me ask you as well. It's my understanding that MNRF own the maps. There was quite a discussion at the region probably 2 years ago in regard to the accuracy. I'm also looking at David, yeah. And they were unwilling to accept the inaccuracies. And I don't think that that's changed. Do you know any more about that?
To the mayor, is that in regards to specifically floodplain mapping or
Yes.
other features? I'm not aware of any kind of previous discussions about the MNRF and the ownership of the maps. I think that would be
Okay.
others or the Conservation Authority might be able to better answer that
I
question.
was
for us.
reading a few articles coming out of Quebec in terms of the dam that exists there. And it was through that reading that I discovered that the maps are just really useless, that most people don't even realize that they're have their houses on floodplain. So I guess we'll see what the outcome is. Do you know anything about that?
I've read some similar articles in the media as well about some of the floodplains in Quebec
Right.
and Ottawa Valley area as well. So like, there's some different circumstances there in terms of the size of the rivers and some of
Right.
the physical dam structures that exist and change the floodplain, but
Okay. I don't see any other councillors with questions. I have a question about the fish habitat mapping as well. And I know that MNRF is responsible for this, and I know that the maps are inaccurate because of the work that the region actually had a team working on it. But even though the work was done, they were unwilling to accept the level of inaccuracy. Is that going to change, do you think? Is it a topic of discussion? It's a big issue for farmers.
yes, to the mayor. yes, it is a big issue, and we're well aware of it, and it is a very prominent topic of discussion that have spent and continue to spend significant time looking at it. You are right, there was a major project done over the last several years by the region in partnership with the Conservation Authority to better map all of the water courses in the region. So that's a major data set and source of information that we have now, and are looking at it as a very important input into the official plan and the mapping that we're going to be creating. So we spend significant time talking about that mapping and talking with different stakeholders about the most appropriate way to use it, and we're well aware of the concerns in the agricultural community in terms of the mapping of fish habitat and water courses.
All right, I have a question about, that refers to page 17, the interaction with agriculture, and it relates to the buffers. Should we understand that when buffers are discussed, that it is a question of the buffer being placed, whether it's natural or not, that the buffer be positioned on the agricultural land? Is that correct?
To the mayor, the question is generally comes around if you have an agricultural property and the agricultural landowner is planning to build something new out of it, like a new agricultural building or structure, that type of thing. So if you look in the Greenbelt Plan and the Growth Plan Natural Heritage System, there's kind of a prescribed buffer that basically says if you are doing a new building or structure, you need to set it back from a natural feature and include a buffer. There's a very important, and my point in the presentation makes a very important distinction that says in agricultural areas, when the land will continue to be used for agriculture, when you're setting back your building from a natural feature, that buffer or the area in between the feature and the building, you don't have to take your crops out of it and plant some type of natural vegetation. It's really providing clarification that's saying that land you can continue to be planting it with crops if that's what you have or that's what you so choose.
And can you continue to spray that area?
Through the mayor, the growth plan policies, and they don't kind of get into that type of land use. So whatever kind of regulations that would be in place in terms of normal farm practices or in terms of farm best management practices or the rules and regulations that go along with that particular spray would apply. It's not the land use policies of the official plan that would we would speak to spraying or that type of thing. That's part of the farm practice.
But there may be a reference in some other document, policy document, that may include some reference to that. You're not excluding that.
There may be, and through some other regulations, but those wouldn't change because my understanding is those wouldn't change through the land use. So adding your building to the property wouldn't change. Whatever requirements you had in the past would still exist, or
Right.
whatever exemptions you had in the past would exist.
So let me reverse this a little bit. Well, I'd like to reverse it completely. So now we have a development. We may have farmland right at the urban service boundary. And there's going to be a subdivision built adjacent to the farm. Are there going to be increasing requirements for developers to create buffers between the development and the farm activity?
To the mayor, I'm not aware of anything that has been part of the new provincial plans or the work that we're going to be doing that's talking about increasing buffers or increasing requirements. Typically, when we have a development application that's coming in proximity to agricultural uses, those are part of the studies that would be coming in to support it, to justify the application. So I don't
Okay.
think it's the intention of any of the work that we're doing to add buffers, add additional restrictions or buffers onto agricultural properties on the
I'm
urban
not
fringe.
I'm talking about it not being on agriculture, but being on the residential development or the industrial development property. That the buffer be on that side.
To the mayor, yes, my understanding is through the development application, if a developer was making an application, they would have to do studies, and some of them include, agricultural and land use studies to ensure that there's the appropriate interaction between the land uses.
Okay, thank you very much. And there are no other questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Norman, for coming in this evening. Councillors, I have a motion moved by Councillor Timmers and seconded by Councillor Reimer. Receive and file the presentation from Sean Norman, Senior Planner, Niagara Region, with respect to the natural environment background study for the regional official plan. Pleasure on the motion. Those in favor? None opposed. The motion is carried. The next item on the agenda is recognition and achievements, and I would like to acknowledge this evening the Lincoln Garden Club, who spent several days last week working with staff and the selection and then the planting of very extensive gardens along the driveway as you come into the town hall. It's starting to look very park-like. There must have been at least a dozen people out there, a dozen members of the group, and I want to thank them on your behalf very much for their annual work in the town. They're also doing some work up in one of the cemeteries, and without their help, some of those special details really wouldn't be able to be considered. So thank you very much to the Lincoln Garden Club. I'll ask you now if there are any, oh, Councillor Reimer? I had your name just came up. Sorry? Oh, yes, okay, I'm just about, I was just now asking, are there any declarations of interest? And I have Councillor Reimer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Several points this evening I'd like to declare interest in. 11.5, Planning and Economic Development Committee minutes of June 10th, 2019. Specific to PD-41-19, the applicant is a customer of the company I work for. Also, 17.4 on tonight's agenda, 2019-56, and also item 17.5, 2019-57-Z529. I'm a friend of the applicants.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reimer. And next, I have Councillor Njima.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am also reiterating a conflict that I declared in the Planning and Development Committee minutes of June 10th, 2019 regarding PD 4419. The applicant is represented by my employer on that application, and so I won't be particularly taking part in the bylaw at the end of the agenda, bylaw number 2016-66Z531. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to the approval of council minutes. And that is item 8.1. I have a motion moved by Councillor Pachariva and seconded by Councillor Russell. Approve the minutes of the following meetings of council. Council minutes of May 21st, 2019. Does council have any questions or comments? There being none, your pleasure on the motion. All those in favor? None opposed. The motion is carried. There are no delegations this evening. There is no correspondence this evening. And we are at item number 11, recommendations from standing committees. We will now consider items 11.1 to 11.5. I'll ask now whether the chairs of the standing committees wish to provide remarks to these items. If you do, just cue yourself on the for the appropriate item. And we'll move on to 11.1, the Committee of a Whole, workshop minutes of May 22nd, 2019. I have a motion. First of all, I think I'll ask Councillor Pachariva, these were your minutes. Do you have any comments? Oh, yes, I've forgotten. Yes, the motion is going to be for all of them. All right, sorry. It's very efficient, we'll see. So Committee of the Whole, workshop minutes of May 22nd and May 27th. Any comments, Mr. Chairman? Go ahead.
Yep, through you, Madam Mayor, just I look forward to the next session that's taking place and would encourage everyone to do your work by the due date, so we can keep this process moving.
All right, thank you very much. And the next set of minutes will be General Business and Finance Committee minutes of June 3rd. And Councillor Timmers, do you have any comments?
I do. Thank you, Mary Easton. I would just like to give a brief overview. We had a presentation from Julie Andrews, who is the Chief Executive Officer, and Donna Burton, who is the Chair of the Library Board. They were here for a presentation, kind of going over the different children's programming and adult programming. They also announced there will be a new Launchpad service that will be arriving in the fall of 2019, and these will be tablets for children to help learn math, and they can borrow them at the library. It's very exciting. Next, we had a delegation from Carolyn Hoxie of Cave Springs Camp, and she spoke regarding a Cave Springs Camp building permit fee relief. We had discussion, and she presented all the different programs and services that Cave Spring Camps will be providing. We had a motion that we approved the request by Cave Springs Camp. Next, we had an asset management update from our Acting Director of Finance and Administration. We also talked about municipal modernization funding, and the CAO provided some projects that we will be looking towards putting some of this funding towards, and that was carried to approve the transfer of municipal modernization funds to establish a technology modernization reserve, to approve the GIS implementation project, to approve the records management inventory plan, and also to approve the online customer service enhancements. We also had on the agenda the federal tax one-time funding. What else? And we also had discussion around the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority Board appointments for the town of Lincoln, with a motion to direct staff to start an interview process to interview citizens for that position. And that was it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And committee members, or council, I will add to the item regarding the NPCA that the town of Lincoln is undergoing recruitment for a citizen to serve on the board for the NPCA as the town of Lincoln representative. The application submission deadline closes tomorrow, June 18th at 4:30 p.m. Interviews will be scheduled thereafter, and this item will be deliberated at the July 8th General Business and Finance Committee meeting. Following that, council's decision will then be sent to the region of Niagara for final council approval. So I'm sure we've all been reminding people as we've met them and have been questioning. Thank you very much, Council, and I'll move on to Community Services and Infrastructure Committee minutes of June 5th, 2019. Chair Bernay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't really have any comments. I think the clerk has done a great job in capturing the minutes of the meeting. Just one comment I would make is that that evening our CAO noted that there will be a report coming back to the committee in July with regards to disaster assessment and the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing in terms of immediate and short-term and possible funding. So I look forward to that report to the July meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next, I have Councillor McPherson on the Planning and Economic Development Committee minutes of June 10th, 2019.
So, Madam Mayor, I do have a question. Are you going to come back to questions on one of the reports?
Yes, you
Do you want,
just.
do you want me to
just-
ask it now?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, my question is.
Make your comments, if you have comments.
Well, my comments
make them
are,
first.
will be very brief. Planning and Economic Development Committee, we had a very lengthy Planning and Economic Development meeting in excess of 5 hours. We had 3 presentations, we had 4 public meetings, and we had several reports. And I will make a commitment to this council that we will not have a 5.5-hour meeting while I'm the chair through the rest of this year. That's it for planning.
Well, I mean, I think you've really hobbled yourself there, Mr. Chairman, but if you insist.
No, you know, and the reason that is that we had many people here visiting for the meeting. In fact, one of the attendees of the meeting sat through the whole 5.5 hours. We went into closed session for the report that he was here for. So he had to leave. So, you know, and getting past 3.5, 4 hours, you know, I think it wears on everybody, it wears on the council, and I don't think the reports that are coming up in those last couple of hours are given the attention that they need. So, just from the chair, we're going to try to make those meetings get it done. And I understand that there's a lot in planning and a lot that we have to get through, but I don't think it behooves us to be working till 11:30 or midnight when we start at 6. Now, I do have a question.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make a comment, and I don't want to be argumentative, but the limitations that are being put on municipalities in Bill 108 have significantly decreased the amount of response time by over 100 days in one case. And so I think everything you said is absolutely accurate. I'm not sure that we've got any help over here on the other side.
Well, I think, through you, Madam Mayor, I think the answer may be splitting the meeting up into 2 nights, you know, if we have to do that. And I don't like to do that, but if we had to do that to get people sharp, you know, during all of the reports, we may need to look at that if we're going to run into 4, 5, 6 hours of meetings.
Fair enough.
So I agree.
Go ahead.
I agree. So my question is on Community Services Infrastructure Committee. It's item 20-40 to authorize an emergency management shared service. And through you, Madam Mayor, to the chief, you know, I believe that the bylaw that is sitting in front of us tonight is different than the bylaw that we saw at committee, in that there is schedules that are here now that were not. And if that's the case, can we have the chief talk to these schedules?
Thank you
Through
very
you,
much.
Madam Mayor.
Absolutely. Chief Hudson?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, to the councilor's question. Yes, you are correct, Councilor. The Schedules B, C, and D, which are specific municipality arrangements for Grimsby, West Lincoln, and Wainfleet, were not included in the draft that went to committee. They have been included for consideration tonight for council as kind of the final version, shall I say. It really spells out in detail what we are looking for in terms of the terms and conditions under each one of those municipalities should they choose to receive services from this agreement. You can see that the schedules are quite different. The one with respect to Grimsby spells out quite clearly the terms and conditions with that municipality, in that the cost will be shared equally between the 2 municipalities. The other 2, Wainfleet and West Lincoln, are slightly, well, they're quite a bit different in that if they do receive services from Lincoln under the terms of this agreement, they would be paying on a cost recovery and fee-for-service basis. And I heard council loud and clear, you know, during committee that they would certainly be paying their fair share entirely, not only for the services that they are benefiting from, but also from some of the development and some of the background work that has gone previously. So they certainly won't be getting a free ride. And quite frankly, I think that from a financial perspective, I think that it would behoove them to sign up rather than pay on an à la carte basis. But, and the other issue is, if we do get recover funds through either one of those municipalities or other parties, the agreement is structured such that both Grimsby and Lincoln, the two main signatories of the agreement, would benefit equally from any other monies that did come in.
Thank you. Counselor, is that satisfactory to your needs?
Well, through you, Madam Mayor, and I appreciate the chief putting some detail to it. I guess, and maybe through to the clerk, is there an opportunity within the council meeting tonight to defer this bylaw? Can I pull this bylaw and request a deferral? And I'll speak to that in that I still do not see where West Lincoln and Waynfleet are incentivized to get on the agreement. This is still a pay per service, and if there's no service, there's no pay. So as I understand the agreement, they've got full coverage without paying for it. That until they actually use the service is when we would invoice them for the services rendered.
Chief Hudson, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, a couple of things. First of all, through you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor, I wouldn't classify it as full service. In fact, they would get no service whatsoever on the basis of not signing up. If they did request some assistance from us, they would certainly pay for it, but we're not just providing service for them. In speaking with Chief Kane earlier, because the structure of the deal is a little bit different than we originally anticipated, we would actually restructure the terms of agreement, terms of reference for those other municipalities so that they wouldn't necessarily have a say in, on a go-forward basis, how we're providing the service, things of that nature. It would strictly be if they requested service. For example, if they requested assistance with providing a training program for their staff or for their council, we would provide that if we could and if it was available to them, and we would fully collect any dollars from them. I should note that some of the work that's been done thus far to bring it to this point, to develop the joint program the way it is now, we have already invoiced those two municipalities for work done so far. And the other thing too is really it's at a crossroads. So if it truly is a joint Niagara West emergency program, they're either in and out, and that's a decision that those particular councils are really going to have to face as we move forward with this thing. It was not originally intended to be two big brothers, if I could use that term, providing the service, and the two other brothers, reaping the benefit of that. That was not the original intent of the deal. So if these other two municipalities truly do not wish to be a part of that, then I think that we need to look at that. Having said that, we are in ongoing discussions with at least one of the partners, Waynfleet, and there are, as we mentioned before, other municipalities interested in it. And the structure of the agreement as is written now still allows either West Lincoln and or Waynfleet to opt in if they so choose. So I don't think it's quite, in my opinion, I don't think it's quite as dire as perhaps the councillor is referring to, where we're paying the freight, so to speak. I think, I know the way it's structured, that they would pay for their fair share if they wish to have service from this program.
Chief Kane, I'm going to ask you to come forward. You've been part and parcel of this since the beginning. It's taken about, I think the discussion about shared services overall started 4 years ago. So here we are in a good place with fire service first out of the gate. There's certainly lots of opportunity in other departments, but is there anything that you would, any comments that you would make at all about your interpretation of how you see this going forward? It may be exactly the same as Chief Hudson, but it's worth having your perspective.
I concur completely with Chief Hudson, and that the program was unfolded to provide opportunities where 4 small municipalities could come together and share equitably in the development of a program. Unfortunately, the alignment of councils, you're aware of what's going on next door and what's happened throughout the region. So at this time, I think it's prudent that we structure the agreement in a way that remains positive and provides the opportunity for the others to join in when they see the benefit in the community. A position of this nature obviously is driven by the development and growth that Grimsby and Lincoln are both going through, and based on local needs and circumstances, as the chief referred to, we are the big brothers. Our needs are exceeding the needs of the neighbors, and they're quite different as we approach Wainfleet. So the agreement was structured in a way that proportional allocation of the costs is introduced. I strongly believe Wainfleet is moving positively. They were going through their own issues with regards to the fire department, building some stability. They have great people involved now, positive vision and support from council. So I'm very positive that they will join in. West Lincoln, I think when they see the benefit that they can receive, and as the chief referenced, the way the program was developed and structured, it's based on the terms of reference with regards to advisory committees and the involvement of the CEMCs. And after the meeting in the last couple of days, we've agreed that we will be taking a more firm line with them, that the existing terms of reference that was originally rolled out simply will not be acceptable to us. They're either in or they're out. As far as a fee-for-service approach, it is understood from our conversations it will be fully cost recoverable, and at the end of the day, it will provide some revenue in an account that typically would not have a revenue.
Okay, thank you very much, Chief. Counselor?
If I may, through you to Chief Kane, so the decision to be in or out, does that mean that in an emergency, we would not support them? We would provide to them training, and we'd get our, we would charge out for the training, but in an emergency, you've got your own emergency plan, you're on your own. Is that how you would define in or out?
I would not wish that on any neighbor, to be honest with you. I believe we still live in small communities, Niagara-wide. From a fire service, we refer to this as mutual aid. In the fire service, we have mutual assistance, or in emergency management, we refer to it as mutual assistance. At no point would I draw the line in the sand and say, no, you're in a disaster mode, would we cut you off and watch you suffer? No, I don't think that's the case or the intent. It's the evolution of the program and getting things in place like mitigation plans. Your Lake Shore is a great example. What are you doing to put plans in place? We've got significant rail and highway corridors going through our communities that West Lincoln and Wainfleet don't have. So there's having strategies. If this happens, we want a plan on the shelf that we can respond to. We will develop things like that, and ultimately we can't make the decisions on behalf of the respective councils. And the engagement in emergency management programming, I believe the councils of Grimsby and Lincoln are aligned right now. Perhaps the others just need some time to embrace the evolution, the natural evolution of being prepared in the event of a disaster.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and I'm very pleased and not surprised at all to hear that answer, that, we're gonna Yeah, we're going to help out. There's no question. And it's not, to me, it's not a case of you're in or you're out. I don't know how we define that. I wonder, Madam Mayor, if in writing this, if there was any discussion around an annual fee that would not necessarily be the share. And again, we're not talking or questioning the need for an emergency plan. It's the resource that we in Grimsby have signed up for that no longer is shared, you know, and we're incurring the cost to have that person on board. So was there any discussion around an annual fee that would help them to make the move to come back in? And it's obviously not going to be the fee that they would pay annually to share the resource, but there's at least some incentive there for them to come back in.
Just give me a second. Counselor, I'm going to refer this question to the chief
Okay.
because I believe we talked about this. Chief Hudson, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I thought there was some discussion about this when the report initially came on the table, the last meeting.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. We did discuss various fee structures. That was certainly an option at the time that neither West Lincoln nor Wainfleet wished to pursue at that time, but that's not to say that that certainly couldn't be re-examined, especially in light of the fact that Wainfleet is willing to come back to the table and have a second look at it. And again, certainly it would be our intent to, recover costs, certainly not to be a burden on either Grimsby or Lincoln. And if I could just respond to a comment as well, it certainly wasn't my intent to indicate that we would leave any other municipality out in the cold, so to speak, if they're in need. But I think there was a distinction between an emergency response to a disaster that's happening versus the emergency preparedness work that goes ahead of time, as well as the business continuity plans and all the rest of it. There's certainly a distinct difference between the two. So I think from a response perspective, I echo Chief Kane's sentiments that we would certainly help anybody out that's in dire straits. But in terms of some of the preparation work and the continuity planning and that kind of thing, then certainly I think that's a different animal that they should really be responsible for. Thank you.
So, Madam Mayor, I'm just going to ask for a recorded vote on this particular item.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chief Kane, for coming to the table. I'm sorry. Sorry, Chief Kane, would you mind coming back? We'll see how things go. Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you, Madam
Please.
Chair, and thank you, Chief Kane, for showing up tonight. It's appreciated to provide this further info. Just curious, when will this topic be brought before Grimsby's council? Would you happen to know? Do you have an estimated timeline for that?
As soon as you approve the agreement.
Okay, so
We're prepared. We were given the authority to engage in the agreement, and until it was passed by the host, it was inappropriate for me to move it before you did.
okay, so the concern I have, and I just want to throw you to the presenter, is that you're at the mercy of council as a CAO, acting CAO in chief, so you're at the mercy of council. So the decision on council has not been made yet through Grimsby. I'm going to maybe ask this through the chief. What is the plan should Grimsby's council not be willing to participate or go with the recommendation of staff or CAO?
Yes. All right, Councillor Mikulik, I'm going to ask Chief Kane to respond to your original question or comment, your original comment.
Through
Go
the
ahead.
mayor to the councillor. We were approved last summer. What I was referring to bringing back to council was simply the authorization to execute the agreement. We- The position, the program and whatnot was approved via bylaw last summer. So moving forward, we moved forward on the basis that Grimsby and Lincoln were aligned, that we were going to move forward, and based on the evolution of the two other municipalities, that we would structure the agreement or the MOU in a fashion that allowed them to opt in. We have different budget cycles than you do, just between Grimsby and Lincoln. Thus, that sort of identified the timeline for the hiring. Waynfleet and West Lincoln also have different budget structures. We have a standalone emergency management budget. Other municipalities, beyond these two that we're referring to, emergency management might reside in, Public Works has a component of it, corporate services might have a component, the fire service might have a component. So I think, to be fair to other municipalities, we have to give them an opportunity to align their flow of money and whatnot. And I think as they go through the exercise, they will realize that the approach that we're offering right now is a very positive one to them, and it's the most cost-effective means for them to move forward and have a robust emergency management program.
Okay, so just for a point of clarity, Grimsby's in, provided that we are committed to providing the service, or, you know, providing that we're sharing in the implementation of this.
We're already in, we're just
Okay.
waiting for the final version of the document to execute, and it just wasn't prudent to move the physical document forward until everyone was satisfied.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay,
Questions?
Thank you very much. Any other questions of Chief Kane, council members? I don't see anything. Councilors, we're dealing with the minutes at the moment, so when we get to the bylaws, Counselor, we'll do, as you suggest. We have a couple of other accommodations that we're going to make around the conflicts of interest, so we'll deal with your suggestion at that time. Okay, so now I'm looking for the motion. Here we are. I just want to make sure that we've dealt with all of them. All right, I have a motion moved by Councillor Russell, seconded by Councillor Pachariva. Approve the following recommendations from standing committees. Committee of the Whole Workshop Minutes of May 22nd, 2019. Committee of the Whole Workshop Minutes of May 27th, 2019. General Business and Finance Committee Minutes of June 3rd, 2019. Community Services and Infrastructure Committee Minutes of June 5th, 2019. Planning and Economic Development Committee meeting minutes of June 10th, 2019. Any questions, any further questions to the motions? Pleasure on the motion. All those in support? None opposed? The motion is carried. Okay. Regional Councillor Rob Foster is not in attendance this evening. We do not have any notice of motion. And we are now considering items 14.1 through 14.4, the filing, receiving and filing council information package. Do members of council have any questions or comments on any of these items? Members of the public, these are quite large packages, but they are available for you on our website. There being no questions, I have a motion moved by Councillor McPherson, or Pachariva, seconded by Councillor Brunet. Receive and file the following council information packages of May 17th, of May 24th, of May 31, of June 7th. Pleasure on the motion. Those in favor, none opposed. The motion is carried. There is no correspondence this evening. There are no confidential items this evening. We move on to item 17. We have 19 bylaws this evening. Some members of council have pecuniary interest, so we'll separate those bylaws for approval. Madam Chair, would you mark them, please? Well, 17.4, I have a request from Councillor Rinjima to put 17.14 at the bottom. Is that at the bottom? Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Madam Clerk, I'm going to ask you to do the roll call on 2019-40 when we get to it. First item. I have a motion moved by Councillor Brunet, seconded by Councillor Pachariva, that leave be given to approve the following bylaws. 2019-40, bylaw for shared emergency services agreement between Grimsby, West Lincoln, and Wainfleet. Madam Clerk.
Councillors, when I call your names to record the vote for bylaw 2019-40, bylaw for shared emergency services agreement between Grimsby, West Lincoln, and Wainfleet, please say yay or nay. Councillor Brunet. Madam Mayor, you need to cue them.
I'm sorry. Councillor Brunet.
Yay.
Thank you. Councillor McPherson, yay or nay?
Nay.
Councillor Miklick, yay or nay?
Yay.
Councillor Pachariva, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you. Councillor Reimer, yay or nay?
Yay.
Councillor Rinjima.
Yay.
Councillor Russell.
Yay.
Councillor Timmers, yay or nay?
Yes.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
And that carries.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on to item 2019-54-Z527, zoning bylaw amendment to permit seasonal tents. 2019-55-Z528, zoning bylaw amendment, Art and Tanya Groenveld. 2019-58, bylaw to authorize a pre-servicing agreement with 2410002 Ontario Inc. for Vista Ridge Phase 2. 2019-59, bylaw to assume Hillside Estates Phase 3 subdivision. 2019-60, bylaw to discharge a site plan agreement on parts 126, 30R-154024, lands conveyed by Cretero Homes Limited for a road widening along East Avenue. 2019-61, bylaw to declare Block 1830M-196 and parts 126, 30R-154024 as part of East Avenue. 2019-62, bylaw to authorize a site plan assumption agreement with Cretero Homes Limited. 2019-63, bylaw to stop up and close part of the unopened road allowance between Concession 9 part of Lot 10 and Concession 10 part of Lot 10, Twinster Road. 2019-64, bylaw to convey part of the unopened road allowance between Concession 9 part of Lot 10 and Concession 10 part of Lot 10, Twinster Road. 2019-65-Z530, zoning bylaw amendment to remove the holding provision NHDG Utopia Inc. 2019-67-Z532, zoning bylaw amendment by Richard and Sean Watson. 2019-68, bylaw to authorize a temporary use agreement with Richard and Sean Watson. 2019-69, bylaw to authorize a site plan agreement with Beamsville GP Inc. 2019-70, a bylaw to establish and regulate a fire department for the town of Lincoln. 2019-71, to authorize the execution of an agreement with the province of Ontario for the dedicated gas tax funds for 2018 to 2022. Your pleasure on the motion. All those in favor? None opposed. The motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Mikulik and seconded by Councillor McPherson that leave be given to approve the following bylaw. 2019-66-Z531, zoning bylaw amendment by Phelps Homes Limited. Your pleasure on the motion? None opposed. The motion is carried. And we note that Councillor Rinjima absented herself. I have a motion moved by Councillor McPherson, seconded by Councillor Mikulik, that leave be given to approve the following bylaws. 2019-56, bylaw to authorize a temporary use agreement with Kimberly Weirmeyer. 2019-57-Z529, zoning bylaw amendment by Kimberly and James Weirmeyer. The pleasure on the motion. Those in favor? None opposed. The motion is carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Petrarivas, seconded by Councillor Russell, that leave be given to introduce bylaw number 2019-72, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held Monday, June 17th, 2019, being read a first, second, and third time, that bylaw number 2019-72 be enacted and passed, and that the mayor and clerk sign and seal the said bylaw. Pleasure on the motion. None opposed. The motion is carried. Do members have any announcements they wish to make? Aha. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and just now that we are into June, and this is our council meeting in June, we did start the farmers market the 1st of June, so we've been running for 2-3 weekends now. The weather has not cooperated, and the turnout has been light, but those farmers and other activities going on at the farmers market are there on Saturday mornings at the Fleming Center from 8 till noon. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And this Saturday, there will be strawberries, I'm sure. Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Brunet.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just very quickly, as Chair of Infrastructure and including Deputy Chair Rinjima, I just wanted to remind the council and for the public, Director Graham did send out an email on June the 6th, but there is a PIC, a public meeting for Phase 2 of Conkle Creek coming up next week, Thursday, June 27th. It's a drop-in format from 5 to 7 at the Fleming Center upstairs in meetings B and C room. That's June 27th, 5 to 7. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I see no other names, but I certainly don't want to miss the opportunity of thanking the staff, the CAO and the staff for the wonderful job that they did on the opening of the Camden Fire Station on Saturday. I don't think anyone went away disappointed. They were just, as always, the staff like to hold back their surprises a little bit, and they didn't fail us, and they certainly didn't disappoint. It was really a great day. So thank you very much for that. I have a motion moved by Councillor Russell and seconded by Councillor Pachariva that council on Monday, June 17th, 2019 be adjourned. Thank you.